I have got so much for you today. Stay to the end because believe me, everything that I'm talking about today is important. Don't, it's going to go on for a while. I don't know how long, but you want to get all of it. First of all, Elon Musk has started yet another company. And if you think trying to get to Mars and establish a colony on Mars is a lofty ambition, wait till you hear what the lofty ambition is for this company. This is Randy Kirk. You want to hit like, subscribe, notify. You want to buy the book, you want to join Patreon. That's all I got to say about all of that. We'll talk more about that at the end. All right, number one. Apparently, I misspoke this morning regarding my price target for Tesla. My price target was not 409. Some people got that. I just misspoke. Believe me, it is hard in that morning show. I am putting that together in about 40 minutes, the research and the writing and everything else, and then producing it. And it goes immediately up with no editing. So, sometimes there's going to be mistakes. But that is the only way. It's like a live show. Just pretend like it's a live show. But I do thank you guys for noticing when I do make a mistake and just pointing it out. All right, let me speak to the NASDAQ reset one more time here. I had no real context with which to figure out what was happening with this NASDAQ reset when I learned about it on Monday, because I'd never really seen one of these before. And I've been playing the market for, half a century or longer. And so all of a sudden we have this 7 or 10 of the top cap stocks that are going to be reduced in their overall percentage on the NASDAQ. And I'm like, okay, what does that really mean? And why, why are all those stocks going down in an up market? Why is the Dow going way up and the NASDAQ going down? And so I thought, okay, maybe this is the reset is today. That's what I assumed. I'm going to tell you, I was completely wrong. I didn't report that the reset was on Monday, but that's what I thought was happening. And it would be one day or maybe a little bit into the second day for this reset to take place, and then we'd be done with it. We'd be back to normal. Well, no, that wasn't the case. So the reset was announced. The details of the reset are not going to be announced until this Friday. I'm almost 100% sure it's this Friday. And then the reset itself takes place the following Friday. So we don't even know what the percentage differences are going to be and which stocks are involved. We just know, I think we know for sure it's going to be the Magnificent Seven and maybe a few others. So the announcement, of course, created massive movements on Monday. We continue to see those movements taking place on Tuesday. And then today, I thought maybe that was over, but I don't think it can be over until it's over. So Tesla continued to be struggling. Now, some of the other stocks had specific things going on. So Meta had the introduction of their Threads thing, and Amazon had, of course, Prime Day. So there were some other things that were affecting these stocks besides just that. And of course, that's true for Tesla as well. But in general, I believe that for the first 3 days of this week, we have been seeing an impact of this remix that NASDAQ's going to do. It kind of looked, and I saw people reporting that this might be a normal rotation, where finally the Magnificent Seven, everybody was kind of, okay, we've made a lot of money on these. It's time to start lowering our position on the Magnificent Seven and buying some of the broader index or the broader stock exchange. But that doesn't seem to have been the case at all. It looks like it was all about this managing of the NASDAQ. Yes, we do need the market to broaden out, and it has broadened out some, but that might have also been partially due to folks needing to sell stock in Tesla, Amazon, et cetera, because of this rebalancing that's going to take place. Many indexes are set to the specific NASDAQ, and they must reset, sell off stock, and buy other stocks in order to have the right layout for their customers, what they've promised to do. Anyway, by the end of trading today, the Mag 7, we're starting to see more in sync with the overall market. Tell me what you think. Do you think that this has been wrung out now? Do you think that there's going to be another hit on Friday when they announce, or Monday, whenever they announce the actual who's getting reduced this much and who's being increased this much, whatever? We'll have to see if that continues to play out, and then what happens the following week when they actually do it. Anyway, I'm not sure. Okay. Number 3 on my list today is the inflation factors other than those I mentioned. We had Greg Grant 4614 at Greg Grant 4614. That's his Twitter handle. Or yeah, no, I guess that's his YouTube handle. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's his handle. In the comments on YouTube, Greg Grant 4614 said inflation factors other than those I mentioned, one of which would be productivity, is one of the absolute keys. Totally agree with you, Greg Grant. Inflation has many components. All right. The biggest is the money supply. You can't have inflation without having more money in the system. So, and you will have inflation if you print money in any governmental system. So you print more money. Well, the printed money is now going to be worth less because there's more of it. And so that is how inflation works. Okay. So now your less expensive money cannot buy as many goods. So that's inflation. That is a way of taxing people without saying they're taxing people. I'm sorry, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is the truth. Governments get to tax you by raising the amount of money in the system. That increases, I'm sorry, it means that they will be paying back their bonds with cheaper money. So it's a way to tax the people, all right? But there's plenty of other ways that inflation is created, or deflation is created, et cetera. And one of the most important ones, maybe the second most important after what the government does in terms of the money supply and the velocity of money, et cetera, which they have some good handles and ways to control. The other thing would be efficiencies, all right? If you can make the product more efficient, if everything is, I'll give you a story. The other day, I needed to buy a smart TV. We were on our Kauai trip. Many of you followed us through our Kauai trip. We were down in Kauai, and the room did not have a smart TV in it. We were going to be there for 23 days. And I was like, no, we need a smart TV. And apparently they weren't going to buy us one. So I went over to Walmart and I bought one for $97. So this is a smart TV for $97. Can you imagine if the entire economy today had that every single thing that you bought had the lowered or the higher value per dollar spent that a television does today? I mean, I also, a couple of years ago, just bought an 80-inch television or something for the wall, and it was like $995 or $1,150. I mean, it's just crazy how inexpensive it is and what they can do. So if you could do that across everything in an economy, then you would have deflation, because you would have everybody being able to buy things with great value for less money. Well, that doesn't happen across everything, okay? And a lot of things, though, it does. So we spend way less of our income today for food. We spend way less of our income for clothing than we did, say, in the 50s or 60s. We actually spend less for transportation than we did in the 50s, 60s. We get more transportation for the same money is what it really boils down to, because we're buying more expensive cars, bigger cars, and we're driving them further. So, but the average household is spending about the same they did as transportation in the 50s and 60s. But other categories have gone up. And why have they gone up? I believe it's because when you are paying less for all of those, now you have what you might call extra profits in your hand. You have extra money in your hand. You don't need this money as much as you did. You don't need as much money as you did to buy these basics. So now you get to bid on other things. So what are people bidding on today? They're bidding on travel. They're bidding on entertainment, and they're bidding on housing. To a lesser extent, they're also bidding on medical. So all of those things have been bid up. All right. There are limited supplies, whatever the supply is, and you have more money to spend. And so now you can spend it on these more luxury type items. And so people are traveling more, and they're traveling to more exotic places. People are entertaining themselves more, and they're paying more for tickets, lots more for tickets. Anyway, you get the point. So, but what we're looking at coming up is this is now going to be starting to happen with BEVs, especially Teslas. But in general, BEVs are going to be a less expensive form of transportation just to buy and to run. And then in addition to that, we're going to end up having full self-driving and robo-taxis, and that's going to drop the cost of transportation again. And that's going to be, and then in addition to that, we have all these other things like Optimus. We have the energies, electricity that's going to drop in price dramatically to the point where it'll be too cheap to meter. And if you question that, if you wonder, how can electricity eventually be too cheap to meter? Can I remind you what it cost for a phone call 25 years ago? Can I remind you what it costs for information? You had to go to the library, you had to look it up, you had to find it. I mean, no, these things have gone to zero. They're almost zero for a phone call. I mean, it is zero for a phone call, zero for information. So GPT is going to drive down the cost of content, legal advice, medical decision-making. All these things are going to be driving prices down of things that used to cost a lot. And that's going to mean we're going to have something left, more money left over, even more money left over. And my expectation that that's going to be a massive shift, more shift into entertainment, travel, the arts, experiences, and I think homes will continue to be an issue. As somebody pointed out, though, I've mentioned this before in a video a few weeks ago, and they said, yeah, but if the population starts to shrink, then home prices will not hold up. And that's absolutely true. Ask Japan, ask China. So, but right now, the US population is continuing to gain because of what? Because of immigration, even though we're not at replacement rate. Okay. So then another commenter, this is on a different subject. Another commenter asked if inflation turned out to actually be transitory. Everybody's like, oh, it's transitory, so we don't need to raise rates and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, it turned out to be transitory, but no, it didn't turn out to be transitory, because even though it was caused by this entire up and down in terms of supply, in terms of money, in terms of how much money there was to spend and nothing to spend it on, all those things created the inflation. And it is transitory, but I don't know that we could have wiped it out without the Fed getting involved, because at a certain point there would have been it would have spun through. In other words, there would have been a sense of, I now raise my prices every 10 years by businesses. Okay, it's normal to raise my prices by 10 years. For employees, it's normal to have a wage increase based on inflation of 5 or 6 or 10%. Those things start to get built into the system, and people have that expectation. And that's what the Fed didn't want to have happening. And I think there's a real possibility that that could have happened. Having said that, they need to stop now, okay? Because right now, they're on the verge of doing the opposite. They can now create a perception, instead of the perception about inflation, now they can create a perception that the crash is inevitable and necessary. And if the consumer believes that and small businesses believe that, then they're going to take defensive actions in order to deal with that. And those defensive actions are going to create the very recession, or maybe even bad recession. Taking money out of the system is going to do the same thing, even worse. So I would say that there's a real chance now, based on what's been happening today, and we'll talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. Of course, we got the PPI tomorrow. If PPI confirms what the CPI did today, if it confirms it, if it comes close to confirming, then inflation is in the rearview mirror at this point. I'm hoping the Fed will say, okay, we need to pause again. The only remaining inflation that we have right now is from housing and from insurance rates. The CPI's reading is from housing, actually rents, not retail, not purchased housing, but from rents and from insurance rates. Well, we know that the rents is a lagging indicator. Truflation is showing that is already at zero. Everything else, Zillow and Redfin, everybody else is saying that's already at zero. And insurance rates. Well, guess what? Insurance rates is part of that whole boom bust thing that we've gone through, because the insurance companies last year were having to pay huge amounts of monies to replace cars that have been destroyed in accidents, and they got slammed. So now they're going back and they're asking regulatory agencies to give them 20% and 30% increases in their insurance rates this year, even though the cost of the new cars has come down, or is coming down, and the cost of used cars is coming down. And so the problem is over, but the regulatory agencies are sometimes inclined to give them what they want. In California and Florida, they're not giving what they want. And the result is Farmers now has pulled out of both places. Anyway, so if we have the inflation from housing and insurance rates behind us, that'll be great. There's one last thing, though, I am seeing with Truflation. I'm mentioning this several times. I'm going to mention it again. Is Truflation today still, we're looking at the last 2 weeks where it's starting to be sideways to slightly up. And the reason is mostly in food, okay? Food and beverages. And why is that? Because transportation is already going up, and transportation is a huge percentage of the cost of food that you buy in the grocery store. So we got transport, you got oil going up, you've got gasoline going up a little bit, you've got now higher cost of transportation, and you've got some potential inflation in food itself. And that is, it's not big, it's really small, but it's just enough to keep us from going on Truflation's numbers. The year over year is not dropped. It dropped below 2.5 to around 2.3. Now it's back up to 2.5. We got to watch that. We got to make sure that that continues down. Okay, back to the news for today. Well, so let's talk again about the PPI. Let's see. I'm not. Let me just go ahead and do this the way I was going to do it. We have inflation under control, but it's not conceivable that the next CPI will be worse than this one. In fact, it's likely to be better because housing continues down. So if the Fed raises in 2 weeks, it will be the last raise. That's the thing I wanted to point out. We're done. Unless the PPI comes in crazy tomorrow, our next month's CPI comes in crazy, it's done. They may not telegraph this right away because they might want to keep expectations on dovishness at bay. But I'm still hoping that they pause the July rate instead of doing the July rate. I'm watching carefully for this inflation to seep back in. That's what we just talked about. All right, different news, Tesla news. Elon Musk has started, well, this is not exactly Tesla. Well, I guess it is. He has started a new company called XAI, and they set up a Twitter account at XAI. He's amassed a team of individuals who have one of the most amazing things in common. Almost all of their names are impossible to pronounce. Seriously, these guys are just unbelievably, their backgrounds at AI are incredible. And he says the goal of XAI is to understand the true nature of the universe. Well, that's a pretty significant goal. I guess that's bigger than going to Mars. They want to understand the true nature of the universe. I suggest they get out their Bible, read it from cover to cover. They will understand the true nature of the universe. All right. Having said that, I'm sure they want to do it from a science standpoint, which is probably going to be way beyond possibility. Anyway, Elon says that XAI is a separate corporation. It's not part of Twitter. It's not part of Tesla, not part of SpaceX, but all of his companies will be integrated and involved. And I'm hearing that this is where he's going to put his truth AI, but I can't find that in anything he said or anything on the new website. So I guess that's where the chat GPT, the GPT aspect of what he wants to do next will end up in this company, but that is not said specifically. All right, there's plans filed in Germany to expand the capacity from 500,000 to 1 million vehicles and to double the battery production from 50 gigawatts to 100 gigawatt hours. That second part is what caught my eye, and nobody else said boo about that. Okay, so they haven't really started that line yet in Germany to make the 50 gigawatts of batteries, but now they're asking for permission to expand it to 100 gigawatt hours. Why do you think that is? Well, that means the 4680 line is coming along just fine. It may be behind all of our expectations, and it may even be behind their expectations, but it's coming. And everything that they have said recently and done recently suggests that the 4680 will be here soon in enough quantities, the kind of quantities we're all hoping for. So an article in Auto Evolution said with regard to the Brandenburg plant. I am so sorry about the phone. Okay, according to plans filed with Brandenburg Environmental Ministry, Tesla plans to build another large production hall to house the additional production area. It will also optimize operations at its existing line to increase productivity. As part of the expansion plans, Tesla wants to double the capacity of its battery production facility from 50 gigawatt hours to 100 gigawatt hours per year. In its impact report, Tesla presented some of the measures it plans to instigate will minimize water consumption at Giga Berlin. Impressively, Tesla thinks it can double the Gigafactory's capacity without increasing water consumption at all. To achieve this, Tesla will implement hybrid cooling towers and eliminate quench tanks and casting. It will also introduce cascade rinsing systems in the paint shop and battery can wash process. So that's some engineering. I'm telling you. Why aren't the other car companies required to do this? Are the other car companies doing this? I doubt it. So anyway, Tesla, that may make it a lot easier to get all of this through the system over in Germany, but I'm sure they're starting well in advance of their need to do this. The article went on to say that further measures will be taken to treat and reuse water. Tesla also plans to capture rainwater, which will be recycled and used for cooling manufacturing equipment. The condensed water from the air conditioning could also be reused in the cooling towers to offset water consumption. They contracted for 1.4 million cubic meters of fresh water, and that will continue to be enough to cover all of phase 2. So with that news, you might have expected Tesla to have had an up day. Okay, there was some kind of reaction to the stock. So, but instead it ticked down at the end of trading. I mean, they're announcing a doubling of the capacity at Berlin, right? Shouldn't that at least have been worth a buck? But the only news I could see anywhere was an article in Market Watch that talked about the step back from euphoria words, step back from euphoria regarding BEVs in the United States, except for Tesla and BYD. So there's a thread of a discussion around the failure after failure of all the other brands to get traction on BEV sales. And that could be tainted, could have tainted the end of the day for Tesla, as people are thinking, well, if it's not just, Tesla's not tainted in this exact article, but if all BEV sales are being affected, then Tesla will be next. Anyway, we're going to do an entire video on that tomorrow with Brian White. I just finished recording it. It'll be up probably midday. Okay. Tesla said that the Model 3, Elon announced that the Model 3 may not qualify for the full 7,500 after December 31. I would imagine that he's saying that now in order to help move the Model 3s off the lot and get as many sold between now and then as possible. Obviously, this means that they're probably planning to use a lot of batteries from China on the Model 3s. I don't think that's going to really matter very much in terms of Model 3 sales next year. Again, this could have been a little minor thing that would have affected a little, knocking off a little bit on the price of Tesla to date, but I don't see that it's going to matter that much with the refresh coming. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, the PPI matters tomorrow. If it misses badly, it could set back the good narrative from the CPI today. If it is better than expected, you might actually see some shifting to a serious hope of a Fed pause. The economists are expecting 2% year over year for PPI. Keep in mind, PPI is an advance. It is a leading indicator as opposed to CPI, and especially parts of CPI, which are not leading. They're lagging indicators. All right, I'm getting close here to the end. Initial jobless claims also come up tomorrow. This could be a help or a hindrance. The street is expecting flat, but maybe they come in $50,000 higher than expected. 50,000 more people filing those claims than we're expecting. That could also help move just another inch towards a Fed pause. Now, maybe on the other hand, they come in lower, and that would be counter narrative. So, but anyways, that's another thing to look for. Of course, I'll be reporting all of this tomorrow morning at roughly 7:10 California time when I do my after the bell. Okay, so Tesla was up a bit, was up quite nicely actually at some points of the day, and then it fell off towards the end. I'm still saying that they're going to get to the full 300 to 305 before earnings. That means they need to get up 28 more points. That's only $5.50 a day. Piece of cake, right? Okay. So if you like the video, there was more news. I actually cut additional news that I thought was not as important. It was long enough. All right. Buy the book, hit subscribe, hit like. You want to hit notify if you want to be reminded about that video I'm doing tomorrow with Brian White. We've got other good videos coming up this weekend, really good stuff. And then thank you very much. Numerous Patreons coming on board. I've just put another video up there today, another one that's unique. And guess what I did it on? I did it on how to do out of the money long leaps. So you've been asking to learn about the leaps. You can get on there now for free. Sign up for 7 days, absolutely free. Even if you decide to stay, it's only $5 a month. and you can get my theories. I'm not an investment advisor. It is not investment advice, but I give you my approach, what I do with these long, very long leaps that are out of the money. That's all I do. That's my entire strategy. But I talk to you about all aspects, 14 different points on the strategy that I use. All right. I think I'm exhausted. I think I'm done. I think I should call it a day. It's been great talking to you.